Hi guys. You know, I wanted to address this thing about being independent, right? After 40 years of marriage, my wife and I had to learn the word being independent, which means someone who does not rely on others. So, if you're independent, how could you be in a marriage and you do not rely on others? You don't rely on your husband, you don't rely on your wife. But in this case, I see a lot of women that say that they're bosses and they're independent. In a marriage, you can't be independent, right? You can't be independent. Um, in a marriage, you're relying on somebody to be dependent, right? So if you're out there, instead of doing 40 hours a week, you're out there doing 80 hours a week, you're dependent on someone else to turn your house into a home. You're dependent on someone that you put your seed in to raise your children correctly. So while you're at work, you're depending on them to teach your children that, listen, dad is out working and mom is here taking care of the home and other things. I'm depending on that person to raise my children correctly, to raise them right, to nurture them, to guide them, and show them that, what it is that we're doing here. I don't need a person to be independent, because if they're independent, then they don't need a family. You shouldn't be in a marriage if you're independent. You shouldn't, because if you're independent, then who's raising the children? Who's taking care of the household? Who's taking care of the day-to-day situation while I'm out there trying to slay this dragon for 80 weeks, for 80 day for 80 hours? Who's doing that? It's not going to be me. So you need to get somebody in your life that you could depend on, right? I'm dependent on somebody to take care of the things that I need to be taking care of, so I could go out there and do what I'm supposed to do as the head of the household. But if you're independent of me, then we're going to have a struggle there, right? Because if you're independent and I'm supposed to be dependent on you, then we're going to have a issue here. An issue is here that you're independent. You don't rely on anybody. And if you don't rely on me to do anything, then why do you want to get married? Right? A marriage is about dependent on your partner, right? For something. And I hear people say, well, I want to have my own bag because just in case nothing happened. You should not go into a marriage thinking like that. You're supposed to go into a marriage depending on your partner on both sides, right? Because there's things that in a marriage that your husband may not be able to do because he's out there working, and there's things that your wife may need to be doing. Even though she is working, that you're hoping that she could take care of that part of it. You're dependent on her. And for me, you know, my Father God have anointed me CEO of this planet. So I am supposed to be out there taking care of my family. I'm out there 80 hours a week slaying the dragon. And I'm dependent on my spouse when I come home to make sure that this house is now a home, that my children are being raised correctly. So they see what their father is going through. They see what both of us are doing. I'm dependent on her to do certain things in the home, and sometimes not even in the home, out of the home. But we're locked into this word, I'm going to be independent, and then you say you want a husband. You can't be independent when somebody's supposed to be dependent on you, right? And if you're not willing to, quote unquote, not be independent and be dependent on somebody and have somebody depend on you, then you shouldn't get married, because that's marriage 101. You become one. That's why you come before the minister, right? To become one, depending on each other. But you come before the minister and you're still independent, which you're still doing stuff by yourself, then how is this marriage going to work? Then what are we dependent on each other for? Because we're supposed to be dependent on each other. Because you have strength that I don't have, strengths that I don't have, and I have strengths that you don't have. And I don't want this to be a clash because you want to be independent of me when we're supposed to be one. That's what the minister says, right? We're going to be one. So let's focus on what's real here, right? We have to put aside our egos and stop saying these things about I want to be independent, and understand that once you become married, you're going to be dependent on your partner. Okay, because there's certain things that's required of you and certain things are required of your partner. But for us to still sit there and keep saying that I want to be independent, we have to stop watching some of these people on YouTube or these platforms talking about I'm an independent boss and I'm a boss. If you're all these things, then why do you need a partner? Because once you're having children, start having children, you're going to have to be dependent on somebody, right? And who better to raise children than the mother, not the nanny? Because some of those children with nanny don't turn out that good, right? Because everybody has their own independence, and independence is the killer of marriages. Because nobody wants to depend on the other person. Nobody wants to show this sign of weakness, and it's not being and the sign. There's no such thing as sign of weakness when you're married. It's a support system set up, right? So that both people or both party could enjoy the lifestyle, not independence. That's not what marriage is about. It's not a, you don't get married to find yourself. You don't. You don't get married to find yourself. You get married. You get married to have a support system to grow and to watch the things that you bring forth, grow. That's the meaning of marriage. So nowhere in marriage does the word independence come up. Dependent come up. So since God anointed me CEO of this planet, I'm dependent on you to do certain things for me. And believe it or not, being at home, taking care of the home, trust me, it's not an easy job. It's not an easy job. I have I have been at home for having surgery, and I'd rather be at work than be at home taking care of the home, because there's just so much to do in the home. So I'm giving the person who I'm dependent on credit and respect of taking care of the home, because I know what it is to take care of the home. You see, it's different when you go to a job and you have tasks and standards that you got to follow. In your household, anything could pop up at any time. So I'm dependent on my partner to take care of the home part, right? Because having a house and we're not having somebody in the house to turn it into a home makes no sense having a house. So let's stop with this thing that I want to be an independent person and become dependent on somebody, because that's what marriage is about. Is it dependent on each other? So people, um, let's put away the devices that we're using, and telling people what they should do, because you're tired of what's going on in your marriage. Maybe that's what you didn't put forward or put forth, the dependent part, and want to be independent. So just to let you guys know, you cannot be independent in a marriage, because you have to depend on each other to make sure that this marriage works. So everyone, if you truly want to get married, first thing is you have to understand who God put in charge, the CEO of your relationship, and you have to depend on that person to do the right thing, right? And that person has to depend on you doing the right thing. But we have to stop using this word, I'm an independent person. And there's nothing wrong with being independent, but just don't ask for to be married, because that's not what marriage is about. It's not about being independent. It's about coming together to be one, so each could depend on each other, because there's things that each other needs for us to progress. And if we don't have that, then what are we saying here? So if you decide that you want to get married, first thing is your Father God has put somebody in charge on earth, right, to be the CEO. And the CEO needs somebody that he has to depend on to carry out certain things while he's out there working. So let's not keep using this word, I'm an independent person, and then say you want to get married. Stay independent, but you're not going to be able to get married, because there's no such thing as independent marriage. And let's not twist words around to make it fit the way how you want to fit. Because that's not what marriage is about. We have to depend on each other. So for 40 years, my wife and I had to learn that there is a hierarchy in the marriage and what we have to do to support each other and how we depend on each other to do certain things and take care of certain tasks in the properties and outside the properties. So everyone, think about this before you get married. Make sure you don't hear the word independent.